All right. We'll open up this meeting of the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal and informal session for October 8th of 2020. And once again, I'm so glad that it's on my agenda because I have no idea what the date is. Let's begin with the flag salute. And Carrie, would you mind leading us? Okay, thank you. You're here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Carrie. We'll move on to the calendar session. Commissioners and Carrie, is there anything that you need us to have on the calendar?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I think the one big thing that we need to talk about calendaring, and this is a little further out than just a week or so, but you may recall the City of McMinnville and their requests around the UGB hearings and meetings associated with that. And you received some dates from the city?
Yes, they're proposing December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd from 3:30 to 7. They would like to get it on their calendar. They're having a meeting next week, so they were wanting some input from us before they make a final decision and really nail it down next week.
So commissioners, Ken and I actually had this conversation, and I suggested to him that if it was feasible, that I would prefer for us to have our own meetings. And I think it comes back to comments that I think you were suggesting, but I don't know if you said outright, so I will say them, is that I feel like if we have our own meeting, we're more likely to have an independent view of the situation rather than a McMinnville specific point of view. That's the only thing. And I checked in with Ken, and it sounds like that's feasible for us to do our own separate hearing.
I mean,
That's how we've done them. The one other time in the past when we've done this for the city of Newburgh, we had our own meeting, and
it's
we
really,
didn't participate in the city meetings.
you know,
We certainly can.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm speaking.
I'm
I believe.
speaking. I'm speaking.
I think you got it before me, but I tried to say it.
No, you got
Ken,
it.
what were you saying?
Well, because really it was a request from the city of McMinnville that had brought forth a proposal about doing a combined hearing that would essentially all of the testimony and hearing and everything would take place with both the city council and with the board of commissioners there hearing the testimony and conducting the hearing. And then their proposal was, then that would adjourn, and then there, whether that's at that same meeting that you break into two different for deliberations and action, or if it's a separate, on a separate date, you may recall we had discussions about that. So,
Right.
Again, the proposal that we have for this 3-day, I think is still following what they were wanting to do as far as the multi-day hearing that basically both the city council and commissioners would be hearing all the testimony at once and then taking individual actions on their own. So,
Commissioners, do you have further thoughts
Well,
on this?
I
Thank
have-
you.
I just have one comment, and I can't speak for the county, even though I've been involved from the county side on the urban growth boundary adjustments. I can only speak from the city side of being as the mayor and a city council member when we went through these hearings, is I found from the city standpoint that it was very good to have both bodies hear the same testimony at the same time, because we'd be knowing what the city's thinking, the city would be knowing what we're thinking. And then after that's over, if we wanted to break apart and have our own separate meeting for deliberations, that's fine. But I think the initial public hearings should be a joint, and that's just my experience.
Commissioner, do you?
I'm a little torn on this, but I think it's important for us to remain independent of the process, because really, if you look at what our role is in this capacity, it is not in conjunction with the city. It is, obviously there's collaboration and the process requires us to be involved, but not in the degree that I don't think that this is necessarily something we should be doing in concert with the city. So what I would be comfortable with is, how we receive testimony after testimony has been submitted in a lot of other different
Sure.
applications. And I think this would be sort of another one of those.
Yeah. And I indicated to, I think it was to Christian and Ken that, I'm going to be reading all the testimony, and I'll probably listen in to the hearings as well. But there's something for me significant about separating the two. I think in terms of timing for me, I'm happy to have it, as soon as possible after that, as soon as the city is able to on hearing wise.
Well, on this one, I have to disagree with Mary, because I think when I look at it, if we're going to meet separately to begin with and stay out of basically the process until afterwards, we're asking most of the citizens of the county who have an interest, or at least around McMinnville that have an interest, that to come to 2 public hearings, one to testify at the city's public hearing, one to testify at our public hearing. I think it's much more efficient. So we're only asking the citizens to come to 1 public hearing to provide their testimony once. And I think that's especially with COVID now, I think asking people to testify at 2 different public meetings. And the fact is, if we don't approve the urban growth boundary, if we don't agree with it, the city can't expand. I mean, that's basically the thing, because they need, since represent the rural area, if we don't buy off on any kind of urban growth boundary adjustment at all, they can't expand. That's a fact of life.
To your point, Commissioner, I think the sort of the best of both worlds is that we on a regular basis read and incorporate testimony into our decisions that has been received through written testimony. Whenever we do a land use hearing, for instance, you see the size of those books. It requires us to really be looking at every aspect of the case. So I don't see that we would be deficient in having that testimony. It would just not be part of a joint process. I am a little uncomfortable with the joint process part of it. I obviously think we should be having, we're not doing public testimony like we used to, where we would have the room filled with people. We're not doing that. We're typically every week we're reading comments that come to us instead of public comment.
Right.
Well, it's whatever. I think this is a board decision, and I'll agree with whatever the board decides to do. I believe it's more beneficial to do a joint one, but that's just my history. And if the board should elect to do our own separate public hearings first, I'm amenable to that. So.
But why couldn't we use the testimony that's presented that evening, either in terms of listening into it, being part of that unofficially, and also the written testimony that would come in conjunction with that? So we're receiving the same testimony, but we're not working it's not the same process.
Yeah.
Question, maybe this is for Ken or for Christian. If we each as individuals receive, as a governing body, if each of us individuals receive that testimony, however it's video or written testimony that people have received or that they got at the public hearing the city has, as a governing body, then are we not, since there's 3 of us, are we not really acting as a formal body in this issue?
My experience in this is, and I'll look to Todd to stop me if I'm not heading in the right direction, but we aren't really in quite the same role as the city. The city is considering receiving testimony, hearing testimony, collecting data on what it would like to see its UGB look like. When it comes to the county, I think we may have, and if I remember this correctly from last time, we had a representative from the city of Newburgh. come to talk about their process and how they had come to make the decisions that they'd made. I don't actually recall if we had any other citizen testimony at that hearing. So I don't think it's I don't think it's likely that we would see a repeat of the same hearings that the city had. I wouldn't expect as many people to come and testify again. I can't think of a reason why, if you wanted to, you couldn't accept and incorporate into our record of your public hearing the testimony and the materials that the city had received. But that's just based on my experience. And if there's anything that I've said that's incorrect about our role in the process, then we can certainly verify that. I would say one thing, I heard some talk about whether or not our hearings might come before the cities, and ours, I believe, would definitely happen after. Yeah.
So in other words, what you're saying, Christian, is that there would be, so in other words, in the past, typically what the cities have done is a distillation of what's been received and then representing that to the Board of Commissioners.
I think they receive testimony. They consider all of the data that they've collected, the reports that they've generated, the experts that they've had present them with suggestions, and then the testimony they've heard from the citizens, and then decide on what they see as their best plan going forward. They prepare that plan, and our role is part of the process to thumbs up, thumbs down to that plan. To be honest, I'm not sure what would happen if we said thumbs down, what the city would then be required to do. I imagine there'd be some back and forth and some discussion about the concerns that the county had raised. And then if need be, some modification to their plan, or else some additional explanation that might satisfy the board that, okay, I better understand your plan now, so I'm willing and able to support it.
The only other thing that I would just add, if you remember correctly from the presentation the city had, I think one of the, and Todd, I'm probably going to look at you, maybe provide some guidance on that as far as the noticing requirements and everything else that goes into play with conducting these hearings, but it's a pretty ambitious, it was already a pretty ambitious timeline. And so, I mean, can we notice our hearing prior to, or is that, the timing of the hearing, so they're going to schedule their hearing, they have all their noticing requirements, they do their hearing, they get the testimony, they make a decision. And then we have it on our schedule that we're also going to be scheduling the hearing, and getting it's a 21 days notice for that hearing, and I'm not sure what all needs to be in the packet, but if they haven't completed their hearing, can we notice
Absolutely.
our hearing? Okay.
It is more of a question for Ken Friday, but yes, we can schedule it all out.
And when I talked to the McMinnville city attorney, they were asking for some input from us now, because they are trying to make sure that they can get their notices out before the end of October for the meetings to occur at the end of November, early December. And we can certainly take a look at those timelines and figure out when it might be most appropriate for the board to then schedule its hearings.
So
Following the
basically, if
cities.
they follow their timeline, the earliest we would be able to, I mean, we can set it now, but the earliest we'd be able to have our probably public hearings would be sometime.
Really didn't make any decisions about setting a hearing until we got a packet of information from the city of Newburgh that said, hey, we're ready. We'd like you to consider this and act on it. So we could take that approach and sort of see where the city is and wait for them to be completed, or we could look at the requirements and the parameters and see if there's a methodology for us to have our hearing. And this maybe is something that the city would be open to have our hearing before they made a decision, in case any new or different or additional testimony came in that they would find helpful in finalizing their plan. But again, I want to be careful about what it is that, and the action that this board would be asked to take, right? If we hold a public hearing before their plan is finalized, what are we really acting on?
Yeah.
I think we have to wait until we receive their plan to be able to say, yes, we're giving it the thumbs up or the thumbs down.
So more than likely, we probably won't see it until after the first of the year. I mean, it's commissioners. So
Commissioner.
And I think one other thing I might mention too, sorry, is you're certainly welcome to attend right? These hearings in November, if one or more of the board is interested in attending, like Casey, you said,
Yeah.
you might observe them. Encourage you to certainly consider that. And if one or more want to be there, we'll just put it on the calendar as something that a quorum might attend.
I like that idea. Also, I would love to have Commissioner Olson still part of the process
Yeah.
before that. But then again, that's definitely probably not something we have control over.
We can talk to the city about sort of where their timeline is and how they may be anxious to get it done on a faster timeline.
December 31st, I think is what they said. But
Okay.
But if we were to basically, as has been, in the past, here's what we've come up with. This is now in the Board of Commissioners' hands.
Mhm.
Prior to that, I don't think it makes any sense for us to have a hearing or
Yeah.
meeting. In other words, we've got to look at what they come up with, and then our role is nothing prior to that.
Yes, I would propose, commissioners, that we communicate to the city of McMinnville that we are open to having our hearing as soon as possible after they finish their last one, which was, I guess, proposed for the 3rd.
And
December.
give us their plan.
Sorry.
Sure, and provide us our plan, because it will take
Yes.
a while for them to provide us our plan.
Right.
Yeah.
So mid-December at the latest.
At the
Yeah.
latest.
And I'm open to having it as soon as possible, whether that be the Friday, December 4th, or the next Thursday. Realistically, it'd probably be better to have it the next Thursday. But
Agreed.
and if that interferes with their timeline, Ken, would you be able to communicate that to them, or who's been tasked with this?
I got a call from the city attorney. I'm happy to call her back and talk about it. If you've got a
Carrie,
contact at the
yeah.
city, maybe we can chat about who would be the most
You were
appropriate
contacted
to.
by the city recorder. I've had conversations with the city manager and planning director, so.
All right, there.
We can communicate with the city.
Commissioner, how does that sound to you?
It sounds fine, because I'm going to be involved at whatever level,
Yeah.
even though I may not be in office at the time, or no, I won't be in office at the time, but I will be still involved with the process as a
And-
citizen, so.
And I mean, ideally, we will be making this decision. I know that they have to get it to DLCD before December 31st. So
So you'll still be here?
Yeah.
Not so fast.
Yeah, well, I'd gladly participate,
Well.
but I don't want to make decisions. And if it's going to be like December 31st, I'd almost rather have our incoming commissioner at least participate, not as a commissioner, but participate in them. And so Lindsay could keep up on what it was doing, because she's going to be the one that's going to follow this all the way through. So, yeah, I'd go to the first one if I'm still in office, or however I far am up to the end of my term, I will participate. But afterwards, I want to make sure that Lindsay has the opportunity to be at the same level of knowledge that I am, so she can make her informed decisions.
we'll make sure that she is included in emails, I think.
Yeah, I
Yes, the
think,
packet.
So other than that, I don't have an
You
issue.
know, the only thing that I would just add to that, we'll connect with Ken Friday about the notice requirements and everything, because I think once they get their meeting scheduled, we can figure out as far as the noticing. The only concern that I have is if we have to do 21 days notice, but we're not going to schedule it or act on it until they finish their hearings and have a decision. Then we start running into the end of December, which then we start running into holidays and everything else. And as you know, every December, we've always had challenges in late December and scheduling a lot of things, so.
It looks like Todd is in
I think we would be making our scheduling based on when they think they will have a recommendation, and we will give that notice ahead of time based on language that they will provide.
Yeah.
Related to the decision that they're making.
Yes, that was my understanding. Thank you.
So it should take place in December.
Okay, great.
thank you.
All right, thank you. That was a long, I suspected we would have a long one in there. Are there other
Is
calendar?
there anything else that was on that's coming up that we need to get on the joint schedule?
I would just like to note that District 6,
AOC Day is Monday.
Yeah.
And
and I do this because
Oh,
you're the
that's
chair.
right. We have to listen to the district chair
Oh, boy.
tomorrow.
And investment committee is next Wednesday.
Yes.
that's right.
Mary is
We did
District
talk about the
6
SWAC
chair.
ordinance amendments, and if that was
Sure,
something we
you have
wanted to
a
talk about scheduling for a work session.
I
do that.
have my word.
SWAC membership ordinance work session would be a good thing because we have the comments from the current SWAC membership right now.
We do.
Yes. It's taken a little while, as you've noticed.
I don't believe we have a work session scheduled for next week, but we could probably do it as early as next week if we're ready.
So I heard from Ashley too, just in terms of thinking about logistics, maybe 2 or 3 of the committee members and a handful of citizens might want to come and speak at that work session. So in terms of trying to keep numbers below thresholds, see how many folks might want to be there and see if we can have some attend in person and some attend in teams or stage folks in the hallway. But it doesn't sound like there's going to be a large.
Week works for me.
Next Thursday, yeah, because I reserved I don't do anything else on Thursdays.
And we don't have a land use hearing, it looks like.
Yeah, so. If they could do it Thursday, we could have all the information to review before Wednesday.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And,
I've got the
Christian,
comments.
yeah.
I
sent
can
them.
circulate them and I'll confirm with Ashley and then have her confirm with the committee and the interested citizens if that's a time and a date that works for them.
Okay,
Great.
We'll have that on the schedule for next week.
Super.
Thanks.
Anything else for the next week or two?
the only thing I'd like to say is I'd like to commend the commission for this morning's discussion on the urban growth boundary. I think this is the kind of discussions, actually, it's an open, frank discussion. Everybody has their own opinion, everybody has their own way. But at the end, we all determined what we thought was the best process. So I'd like to thank my fellow commissioners for working through that. Even though it might not be what I did personally, I support what the other commissioners wanted to do, so I don't have any problem.
We came around to it, so thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it, Carrie. Thank you for your patience with us.
Thanks, Carrie.
Sometimes we just got to talk things out. All right, we move on to item D, which is public comment. And due to COVID-19 and physical distancing requirements, anyone wishing to submit general public comment or comments related to a specific agenda item may do so in written format via email at bocinfo@co.yamhill.or.us or by mail at 535 Northeast 5th Street in McMinnville, Oregon, 97128. Any comments received prior to the meeting will be shared with the Board of Commissioners and submitted to the record. And I even saw at a glance the shape before. We don't have any public comments for today. We move on to item D, which is work sessions, and we have none today. We move on to item F, which is department updates. And our department update today is the clerk's office with Clerk Brian Van Bergen. I don't see BVB here yet, but he has a lot of important work these days. October 13th is the last day to register to vote or change your registration.
Maybe that got by him.
I know that he's been taking selfies with his ballot drop boxes, so maybe he's out.
I saw facilities, it looked like they were getting ready to install one, so maybe he's-
Someone coming up.
Yeah, and then we take one
Supervising.
down to the library.
he may be.
Yeah.
coordinating that.
That one looked really good. It was very shiny.
I think we can give him a pass on this one, just not because he's doing
Okay.
anything.
Maybe he'll join us late.
If he
Yeah.
joins us late, then yeah, we'll come back to him for sure. We move on to item G, which is our consent agenda, and we have none. Not that we can't find the consent, we just don't have it on the agenda. Item H is old business, and item H1 is consideration of approval or consideration of the adoption of written findings and conditions of approval for docket number Z-02-20/SU-02-20/SDR-16-20, which is a request by Integrated Beverage Group LLC for a limited use overlay zone amendment, a similar use determination, and a site design review. The applicant is seeking to co-locate a distillery and related spirits tasting within the existing winery facilities. The applicant and / owner is Integrated Beverage Group LLC, and this was continued from September 17th of 2020. And the findings are in the packet, and
They
Todd,
are not.
no, I didn't, I was like, I don't see them, but
The attorney for the applicant has not provided a draft of the findings yet, and I'm expecting to get them by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Yes, I have not received draft findings from the attorney for the applicant and expect to get those by tomorrow.
Great. Shall we move
Have
to?
them by October 15th.
Okay, great.
So this will be continued.
We'll continue on.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
To that.
But we do have item H2, also under old business, which is consideration of the adoption of written findings and conditions of approval for docket number C-22-19/SDR-35-19, which is a conditional use permit request and site design review to operate a flower processing facility, an on-site bakery as a commercial activity in conjunction with farm use from within an existing to be remodeled agricultural building granary. The applicant is Bram Yofi and the appellants were 1000 Friends of Oregon. The appellants would be Anthony Boutard, continued from September 24th of 2020. I think that just didn't get clarified last time. But we do have the findings. At least I believe you received an email from Todd with them.
We'll make sure that the action list of the items is updated. correctly.
Perfect, thank you. It just felt, I didn't want to say things that weren't true.
That's correct. It's incorrect. Yeah.
Well, commissioners, if there's no other discussion about it, I would move approval. Do we have any other? Do we have any further discussions on item H2? Great, then I would move approval of item H2. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The record show unanimous approval of item H2. A lot of people involved in that one. Thank you, Todd. And, thanks, Abhishek, too. Move on to item I, which is other business. Item I1 is consideration of approval of amendment number 2 to agreement 18-258 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Military Department of Office of Emergency Management, which is board order 18-394 for Yamhill County Emergency Operations Center enhancements, extending the agreement to December 31st of 2020. And Commissioner Starrett or Ken, do you have anything you'd like to add?
This is just extending it, and we're just really grateful we were able to get the work done that was done in time for the events that we've had for our emergency management department. And it's beautifully done, and they're doing a great job in utilizing the space. So
It's great. Yeah. I'm amazed at what they were able to do with that space.
did you know that emergency manager Brian Young actually went to, I believe he drove to Tacoma. He found that there were going to be some surplus school tables somewhere. He drove there, picked them up, spent $2 for each one of them, and came back. Now, this is what I call fiscal responsibility, because he had the money to buy them new. He found them cheaper, drove up there on a Saturday, picked them up, came back, and they look beautiful. So
And I did
kudos.
feel like I was in school and I was sitting with them at 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah, kudos to that.
Didn't you, Ken? I felt like I was in school. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to commend Brian for doing that, because, that I think just goes to show how our management team and everything, how they really are concerned about fiscal responsibility. Because he had the money to buy them new. He wasn't required to go up there. He took the initiative himself, found them. They were a much better deal. Drove up there on his own, brought them back, and was able to save the county that much money.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what our management team, kind of things our management team is doing now. And so I really got to hand the kudos to Brian.
So I'd move approval.
All right. And it's also a great location, by the way. Whew. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. The record show unanimous approval of item I1. Item I2 is consideration of approval of amendment number 14 to agreement number 159833 between the Yamhill County Health and Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority, which is board order 19-222, moving $508,763.17 of unspent funds from fiscal year 2019-2020 to the current fiscal year, adding $23,302 in CARES Act supplemental flu funding, with permission to apply Board Order 20-336 and adds $536,072.60 for case investigation effective July 1st of 2020 through June 20th of 2021. And it's a lot in one, but I thought the memo was very effective. So
In terms of being able to utilize the CARES funding in place of the other funding, which we don't have to spend down while we still have this other $23,000. So
I think
would
it's a
move
great
approval.
move. Yeah.
I do too. I'd move that we approve item I2.
All right. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? The record show unanimous approval of item I2. Item I3 is consideration of approval of amendment number 11 to agreement 159184 between Yamaha County Health and Human Services and the Oregon Health Authority, which is Board Order 19-228, for additional funding in the amount of $42,921.68 for the financing of community health, addiction treatment, recovery and prevention, and problem gambling services retroactive to July 1st of 2019 through December 31st of 2020. And Commissioners, anything you'd like to add to that?
This is our chronically mentally ill agencies population, and that's what these funds will be used to support.
And
Yes.
the only comment I'll make is I think this year it's critically important that we look at those because with COVID, as we know, the mental health issue and everything isn't getting any better. Alcoholism is up. Mental health picture isn't getting any better. So I think it's very critical that we be able to utilize this money to face those kind of issues. So
Thank you.
Well, I would move approval of item I3 then if there's no further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign? The record show unanimous approval of item I3. I'm glad I paused for a moment. Item I4 is consideration of approval of the following persons to the members pool for the 2020-2021 Board of Property Tax Appeals, also known as BOPTA, and it's one of my favorite acronyms, with terms ending June 30th of 2021. There's the county governing body pool, which is Jessica Payne, a non-office holder and chair. There's Matt Smith, non-office holder. There's Benjamin Mansheim, which is also a non-office holder. And in the non-office holder pool, there's also Jessica Payne, non-office holder, Matt Smith, non-office holder, and Benjamin Mansheim, also non-office holder. And we received the memo last week as well, so we had a little bit of a heads up. And if Clerk Van Bergen joins us next time, we can ask him about them if we need anything.
I read the memo. I read everything. I would make a recommendation that we approve item number I4.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Record show unanimous approval of item I4. Item I5 is consideration of submitting a letter to Oregon Department of Transportation in opposition to the designation of West Side Road as a truck route. And we have a letter in the packet. We've not actually discussed this as a body, but I gathered from your head nods and comments that it might be something that you would like to say to ODOT.
Well, I appreciate the letter, so thank you for doing that. And I think we've received enough emails with enough really solid corroborating information that it's been very instructive. So I'm
Yeah.
okay with that letter. I think it's great.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay, great.
Thank you for writing it.
Yeah. I think it was very clear from Director Lago's presentation that this is something that we have. There are so many challenges with the road that we need to work on that we don't need to have another 750 trucks on it per day.
Right.
Okay, great. Well, I would move approval then of item I5. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? The record show unanimous approval of item I5. Item I6 is consideration of approval of the Project Oasis request to support affordable childcare and a community access facility in the amount of $400,000. And we have, Ken.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I just want to start, remember we had a discussion and Anisha is here as well to answer any questions that may come up that you may have on this. Where we left this last week, there was a presentation you had asked before you were going to consider this or deliberate or take any action on it, that, I go and take a look at the budget and CRF funding, as far as CARES Act funding eligibility. I do think with the project and getting further information from that, published online and doing some research in the CARES Act, I do think this is one of those categories that it would be a grant program in direct response because of COVID. So I do believe it would be eligible for reimbursement. As far as the budget goes, and it's something I'm going to have to monitor, we do have a couple of funds that we have held some appropriation authority in for potential grants and asks. One is the ONC fund, the other one is landfill license reserve. It would be my recommendation that we use the landfill license reserve if this is approved moving forward. We have $529,000 of appropriation there for grant type requests or one-time projects, but then keeping in mind that we will be submitting for reimbursement, so that fund will get reimbursed. One of the challenges that we do have with Oregon budget law is even though we're going to get reimbursed for those funds, it doesn't mean we can go out and spend another $500,000, another $400,000 on another project. So that would require some further actions that either it's an appropriation transfer or it might, at some point we're monitoring budget with the current COVID situation that we may have a situation of everything that's going on, we may need to look at a supplemental budget come mid-year anyway. So it would be something that we could, if we spent the funds and we appropriated those funds and we used them, we would get potentially get full reimbursement for it. And, so it would replenish, just keeping in mind landfill license reserve, we're not necessarily getting the same levels of revenues that we have in years past. So once we start spending down some of these funds, they're spent and they're not necessarily being replenished. This is a little bit different because we are going to be exploring reimbursement.
I have a question. So this, let's say the money is repaid and we wind up replenishing that. Do we need appropriations authority for anything that we spend subsequent to that? So in other words, the money's repaid. Does the appropriation authority just cover what we've spent, even if it's been
The
repaid?
appropriation only covers
Mhm.
what we spend. We send, we set spending levels in the budget. So if we spend the full appropriation in landfill license reserve, which, we have about 500 and, we'll still have 130,000 of appropriation left, and that's after dedicating the 400,000. We get reimbursed, that doesn't reset our appropriation. We still only have 130,000 left. In order for us to spend above that or be able to access those reimbursed funds a second time, we would have to transfer appropriation authority from another fund or do a supplemental budget to adjust the appropriation authority.
Good question.
Interesting.
And
Thank you.
actually, great answer too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say.
All right.
And we also have, commissioners, we also have Abby Shaw, and I believe, I don't remember. Yeah, please. That's good, because then you can tell us.
It's always so nice to see your smiling face.
I didn't know it was you
Mr.
till I
Murphy
put
is,
my
I think.
glasses on.
It's because of the bond, right? I wish I could show you my smile because I'm grateful to be here. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and staff for having us back. So again, I worked with Ken to be able to provide you the answers that you were looking for, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back and have that conversation. Also with me today is Tim Murphy, who is the Vice President of Operations and representative of the Spencer family. So Vice President of Operations of BCI and representing the Spencer family today. So here to offer any support in terms of questions that you may have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to Ken.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I do have questions, maybe Mr. Murphy or maybe Abisha, maybe this is something that,
We'll do tag team.
okay, thank you for being here. It's nice to meet you. It's sort of the, one of these companies that's a well-kept secret in our community. And I was trying to figure out what DCI meant and I couldn't see where it stood for anything. And I looked it up and all I kept finding, it kept going back to DC.
Dental Components International.
Okay.
So-
Right. But I did
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
did look up, anyway, it was very, very impressive. So the question I have is, So how far does this extend out in terms of income levels so that we're able to provide daycare to all income levels?
That is the goal. The goal here is to, let me start with the idea that our second core value at DCI is to enhance the lives of our employees. One of the things in which they struggle with, is affordable daycare and childcare. So with this program, we're aiming to provide subsidized daycare down to those employees that struggle the most. The program was initiated really under the goal of unlocking a workforce that is handcuffed at home right now due to what's happening with COVID. This is not a program that's really looking to pilfer from other employees that are already working elsewhere. We're trying to unlock a workforce that just can't get to work because of the situation that's out there. The more we scratch the surface, the more we recognize through help of Avisha and other people that have been ambassadors of this program, that this is a countywide issue on top of a statewide issue that predates COVID. So where we're standing is we've been inspired to hopefully start a model that can be replicated elsewhere around the state in other counties that create this three-legged stool of corporate and subsequent partners and backed by state and federal government, whoever wishes to participate, to make this all possible, to open up, unhandcuff these people, let them get to work, let them feel that they're meaningful in their day-to-day lives, and not be so dependable on aid packages that are falling through like that.
I have a couple more questions, but if anybody else wants to jump in. So the other thing is, wondering if you're approaching this from a regulatory approach in terms of dealing with the legislature, because we know that sometimes if you look at the regulations that are being imposed on childcare facilities and staffing and all those regulations, they really do add to the cost, which makes it prohibitive. And so I'm wondering if we can look at, because I'm looking at some of the white papers that have been written about childcare and the costs due to government regulations. So whether we take SDCs, which is a component, and ask for some mercy there. And also at the state level for some of the regulations that are talking about staff to child ratio, which if you think about it, sometimes it just adds to the cost for a low income single mom being able to pay for it when the staff ratios make it prohibitive because of what they have to pay staff. Those types of things.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Sarah. You're making some really good points, and they certainly are obstacles to childcare facilities opening. So a part of this process, our childcare service provider of this project, Little Bird Childcare, has multiple facilities throughout the region. We have partnered with her and another childcare service provider to put together proposals to the city of Newburgh and the city of McMinnville for considerations of decreasing barriers for childcare organizations to open. One of those partners participated in the project out in Bend, where a group of childcare service providers came together, put a proposal in front of the city council requesting considerations, right? One of them was a moratorium on SBCs until the end of the calendar year. And this was done several months ago. So they were a little ahead of us. And in doing so, that did open the door for these childcare facilities to be able to afford to open, especially you're talking about some of those regulations that existed pre-COVID. They now have this second layer of regulations related to COVID. And one of the issues that childcare facilities have is the way that they do traffic studies for childcare facilities. I saw an example where in the city of McMinnville, for example, the way that those SDCs are managed, and certainly the city isn't here to defend themselves. So this is information I received, but I don't have something to present you. The childcare facility was more expensive based on the traffic study than a movie theater, right? And it's because of old approaches to traffic studies. So work needs to be done here, right? Not because the city of McMinnville wants to create hurdles. It's kind of historical stuff that needs to be dealt with. So this project, in recognition of some of those issues, we have been partnering with the city of Newburgh in conversations around this process and working, first of all, to try to expedite the permitting process, which takes a little too long to be able to be as responsive to the community as we need to be. And they are considering mitigating costs and hurdles for childcare businesses and facilities that are trying to open, not just this project, but this project is bringing it to light. And one of the things they're looking at is what would it look like to have a moratorium on SDCs for childcare, at least for a period of time, while we further understand these limitations that we're imposing that are not state regulations, that's another level, that these are city-based regulations. So the next conversation is, Bonamici's office has done some really great work around the Child Care Act, the Federal Child Care Act. We just, on the county leadership call yesterday, was that yesterday? I'm losing track of my days.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, thank you, yes, today's Thursday. Al Bannon, a representative for Bonamici for our area, and I touched base and plan on having a follow-up conversation to talk about what are those hurdles at that higher level, right? What are we doing to actually prevent some of these affordable, localized, legal, safe childcare facilities from opening and being affordable? So that was a long answer because this is a really big problem. This project is bringing to light a lot of these issues and giving us a chance to have good conversations. The work that the county did in the assessment and trying to identify opportunities for childcare is also giving us some footing in that space. But these conversations are being had.
I would encourage you to address this with OHA and ODE, because yesterday, as you know, the guidelines, or Tuesday or Wednesday, the new guidelines came out for childcare and youth programs. And this is in response to, we've had so many people locally who want to stand up places for kids to come and do their schoolwork now that the schools are closed, and they can't. They have to actually register as an emergency childcare center. And this is just for a church that wants to open up a room for supervised online learning. It's become prohibitive. Even with these revised guidelines, it's making it impossible for parents to get back to work. So I would just, hammer home the importance of working at the state level.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And because of those sorts of hurdles, we're actually putting the distance learning component of this project under the child care license so that we can kindergarten through age 13 without coming up against those hurdles, like many of these other partners you shared have done. And that's why these sorts of projects where you have public-private partners, you have the city involved, the county involved, the state. I'm working with the representatives from Business Oregon, Jody Christensen from the Governor's Regional Solutions team. We're having these conversations with our state representatives because of exactly those issues that you're bringing up. And these sorts of projects, again, can help to highlight that and start pushing against it.
Thank you for that.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Commissioner, thank you for your questions too.
Thank you.
Yes.
I should have started with this. I do want to just say on behalf of BCI, on behalf of the Spencer family, which I'm part of, I want to say thank you for your consideration in this, and we appreciate your time on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And thank you for your patience. You probably know from the work that you actually do, the making of dental components, how it can feel very frustrating working with multiple jurisdictions and different partners. But I've also seen it's the way to get things done, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Well, there's something that we say around the hallways is you have to respect the process.
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Olson has some kind of statement. Process.
Actually, I do.
Here's a process, little ditty he's always been saying for the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's right. Process. And, in this case, I think specifically at the state level, the process is broken, like you said, about what needs to be done. And the counties are asked to take on so much responsibility without the funds. And I think this project and Project Oasis and the DCI project sends a strong message to the legislature that, hey, the cities are willing to do this, the counties are willing to do this. Now, we need to push back on the legislature. And through projects like this, hopefully pushing back will get them the word that, hey, we expect you to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Whether it will ever happen, who knows? But I'm so concerned about economic development and especially about the family unit and what's happening with the family unit, because people at entry level and above can't get childcare, so they stay home and either they have to quit their job or they can't go back to work and they have a job that they really can't do on workplaces, but because of childcare, they have none. And I want to see something that incentivizes those people to go back to work so they can quit relying on the federal government and the government to give them handouts. And I think this is an ideal project, and it could be used as a model saying, hey, we're concerned about your family. And that's one of BCI's core values. And we're concerned about your family. And so we're going to address this. And we are also asking as a private corporation, they're also asking and Abishar are asking the public government agencies to also put skin into the game. And, I can only say a thing about, I think like Yamhill County has always done in the past and other issues, I think this is a chance for us to lead the state and the nation in how programs can be put together like this that work. And so I'm all for it. And I have to commend DCI for wanting to
Thank
make
you.
this.
And thanks, Abishar.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. All right. Well, then if there were no further comments, I would move approval of item I6. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Perfect, share unanimous approval of item I6. And thank you, Ken, for finding the time in the last week to go over this with Abishai.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Now a lot
Thanks a
more
lot.
work for you to do, Abishar.
That's
Keep
right.
keep moving on, and DCI, keep moving on.
Just to say, you guys will be proud of what we built.
Awesome.
Don't
Thank
see
you.
it.
Yeah, thank
Thanks a
you.
lot. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Go back to your kitchen remodel now.
Oh my gosh, I have functional appliances, so.
Woohoo!
Yes,
Oh, that's a
I
good
will.
start.
Just in time
Don't
for
tell my wife
Thanksgiving.
that. She'll want me to get the new range in, and I'm not ready
I'll
to
send her
put that
pictures,
in.
it'll be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're doing the microwave and toaster up in there because the range is pulled out because of the new counters and everything.
Oh my
So,
gosh. We move on to item J, which is public hearings, and we have none today. Wow. Move on to item K, which is announcements and commissioners. Oh, Ken, no. You raised your hand, or you raised.
Well, I was just gonna say with the last agenda item that I'll probably need some assistance from county counsel's office, and we'll put together an agreement and come up with the logistics of how the funds are gonna get released and everything. I just wanna,
Thank you.
there'll be some work, and if there's questions about process or, please let me know.
Yes. Trust the process. And
yeah, trust the process.
so sometimes you have to have a process.
You might not like it, but you have to trust it, because if you don't, you'll never get anything
Yeah, it's a
done.
$400,000 check that we're writing.
Yeah.
We'll wanna have-
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you. Commissioners.
Well, yeah, I just have a couple things to bring up. Is I am concerned, and this is not with us, but I am concerned about the COVID incident testing, not the number of units the state's getting. I do believe that it will, and I don't think OHA, I don't know if they're hoping for this or what, but it will no doubt show, the more testing you do, it's going to show an increase in numbers. That they're not going to use this additional increase in numbers with the testing, the rapid testing, to justify shutting down more of the economy. And I think that's happened. So that's one of my concerns. After there, my other concern is out of the 80,000 initial case, 80,000 initial those the state's supposed to receive this week, and then every week they're talking about, I think it was 25 or 15,000 of those being put in a strategic reserve, the state putting in the strategic reserve and not releasing them to the general public or to organizations. And I think that's just a wrong mistake, because that means there's that many more tests that we can do, but because the state is elected not to release that and build up their own stockpiles, we can't do it. So I am very upset with that part of the governor's press conference and their track. And I think my feeling is that they are going to, from an economy standpoint, and everything we've been talking about for the last 6 to 8 months, that they will use this as an attempt, OHA and the government, the state government will use this as an attempt to curtail more businesses. And so I'm not for that. I'm for the instant rapid case, but I'm also for the realization that they have to realize that they're going to get an uptick in cases, but it's not because the situation got worse. It's because we're doing more testing, and I want them to address that and admit to that, and they won't. So that bothers me. The other thing is I had a good talk with McMinnville's mayor the other night about the planning for next year for the outdoor dining and everything.
Mhm.
It was such a success, and last weekend was the last weekend, and it was such a success. They're looking at what we could potentially do, not to have that big of an impact, to allow with sidewalks to be blocked and temporary sidewalks put out where the parking spots are. So it still maintains 2 lanes of traffic, still maintains sidewalks, but it allows businesses to put umbrellas or canopies out on the sidewalk with space heaters underneath so they can continue to serve outside. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
But
Good to hear.
the city of McMinnville did such a great job of this outdoor dining.
Mhm.
I have to go downtown every Saturday and Sunday and Friday nights just to see how many people are down there. I swear there was at Capo restaurant, they were set up for, I think they had, with social distancing, 10 tables outside because they were able to get permission to use the music store next door space. 10 tables outside with, and these are like with white tablecloths. So they had some big event. It was packed. They maintained social distancing. And Scott, the owner of Capo, one of the owners of Capo, says if it wasn't for the outdoor dining, that they would not have been able to stay open. So and I guess that's my only comment. The other comment is, unfortunately, Monday I'll probably meet the committee meetings, but I notified Sarah and Mackenzie that the legislative and the board meetings, I will not be in attendance. I'll be in Northwest Portland at the Northwest Urology Clinic getting worked on. And it's like, I'm tired of being poked and prodded. But that's the way it goes, so I will miss those.
Okay.
But I won't miss tomorrow's Area 6 meeting, District 6 meeting.
Oh, it's going to be a
And
blockbuster.
And we'll both be at legislative, I know that, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, all the
Anyway, that's
best.
the only announcements I have.
Great,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, the concerns about now that the outside seating is going to be stopping when the rains set in, how will that impact our businesses? And more to the point of, at some point, we would hope that the governor would let up a bit on these restrictions. One of the things we've been seeing over and over again is that people are emailing us with their frustrations about their kids and how the kids are struggling. You've probably received this as well. And they're just struggling. The kids can't seem to get a hang of this, nor should they, especially people who limit screen time for their children. Now, all of a sudden, you're sticking a kid in front of a screen and saying, this is how you do school. So there's a frustration there. And I've been asking if we could, look at some of the numbers and change the restrictions and the metrics. Unfortunately, we thought we were going to be able to pass muster on the school reopenings, but we don't. And again, I have fears that with the increase in testing, we're never going to ever get ahead of this because we're going to see more and more positives, which necessarily we know doesn't translate into sick people or people who are in hospitals. So I had contacted the governor's office through Leah Horner and asked if OHA would modify its quarantine requirements now that we know those PCR tests don't translate into infectiousness, and also whether they're going to be able to change the restrictions so that kids can get back to school. Well, the guidance that we got just says basically, no, it's not going to happen. And the restrictions on people just letting kids come and congregate and do schoolwork isn't going to happen. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about what this is going to do to our economy. And I would just really encourage people to contact their legislators and push for more of a balanced approach to this.
I think especially, Commissioner, when you have families that one of them can't go to work, but young kids are smart. But to change the whole methodology of learning for the young kids, and especially if you're a mother that's trying to homeschool via electronics or participate via electronically, three different kids, different age groups that you can't keep track of. You can't spend any quality time with any of them because you're moving back and forth. And that's my big concern, that we're not only tearing apart the economy, I think we're tearing apart the family unit too. And that's a big concern of mine. So
Thank you.
So my understanding, I was hearing from the press conference that you referred to. I got onto it a little bit late. I guess there was some kind of glitch, and so then the live stream didn't happen. So I was waiting, but I only got to the questions part.
Right.
But it sounded like, and I need to follow up on this, that the OHA and the governor's office are considering changing the threshold for the positivity rate statewide.
Mm-hmm.
Was it clear whether there were any other of the thresholds, or was it strictly the positivity rate?
All I'm seeing is a positivity rate, but
Okay.
That's all I heard.
Okay.
and I'm looking at the guidelines for the requiring emergency childcare
Yes.
licensing.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much quashes any hope we had that these places would be able to open up right now.
Right. Yeah, I'm hoping that, I'm seeing, we were, Yamhill County was 2 weeks with solid numbers for K-3 for in-person, which I acknowledge a school district is not going to be able to immediately drop comprehensive distance learning for those who want to be in person and go to it. Mayor Caput from Amity talked about that on the call, actually, how long it'll take to get into it. But we still didn't, we had a 5.3% statewide positivity rate. So even if we were meeting the metrics with that positivity rate, Yamhill County, school districts in Yamhill County wouldn't have been able to go to a K-3 in person. So I'm hopeful at least that is addressed. And partly, I understand what you're saying with the increased testing capacity, but ideally, if there are not more cases circulating, the positivity rate is actually going to go down as you test more, which is hopeful to me.
That's hopeful. If that
Now
happens,
you will have more cases, but right now the statewide positivity rate seems to be the thing that's holding back a lot of school districts.
Yeah.
And that would go down with more
but
tests.
they're not. What I heard is they're not talking about, when they talk about the positivity rate,
Mhm.
they're not talking about going down. They're not talking about how much it has to go down to prove that the sensitive testing works. So does it have to go to 3%? What does the positivity rate have to go down to? They're talking about, seeing a decrease in the positivity rate, but they're not telling us what amount, at least the way I understood it, what amount that would be. So if we
Right.
drop 1.5% on the positivity rate, is that good enough?
Right. Well, my understanding is that they're talking about raising the positivity rate threshold for school reopenings, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. but
ideally,
that's-
we'll see a decrease in the positivity rate, but the OHA is looking at whether they can raise the threshold.
Yeah, that's.
So it'll be like
that's
going
not
up.
what I understood. Very possible, but that's not what I understood myself. So, but anyway.
But I wanted to follow up. We have I had the governor call with county chairs who are in wildfire affected counties last Thursday after our meeting, and then I had the Santiam Canyon Economic Recovery Team meeting this morning. And on both of those, Commissioner Nyquist, sent out a call, and if you have ideas about this, I think it would be helpful. Sent out a call that the time it's taking to get DEQ in to do household hazardous waste cleanup, it's still too short of a time to get what I learned is called the ash and trash. I love that as a phrase, to get it out of essentially the waterways. And so he's trying to figure out a way that that they can mobilize folks to essentially like lay down straw bales, get up to the creeks, the banks of the North Santiam. So if you have ideas or you want to provide suggestions, please reach out to him. That it was very clear that he is welcome to all ideas. And the one challenging thing, of course, is that it's private property up to the high water mark. So they still need the right of entry document signed for every property.
And Commissioner Willis was addressing that specifically
Good, yes.
For Marion County and the whole concerns they have about well water and about water contamination
Yeah.
and about access to property. So they've got a problem on their hands.
Yeah, and it's we're now at about 5 weeks until
Yeah.
standard snow on the ground as well,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
will
once
complicate
a
it.
lot of that gets in, you can put down all the straw bales you want, but if it gets in the groundwater and gets into the river, all bets are off what's gonna happen. So I'm unhappy with the length of time it's taking. I understand the right to entry. I understand all that. But I believe, and I will send him an email.
Please.
I believe that there's other ways that they could speed that process very rapidly. But whether the state, whether DEQ is willing to do it is another thing.
Mhm. And I think that he is acknowledging, I know that DEQ is working on, the DEQ is already doing household hazardous waste cleanup on properties in Lynn County, but it's the other stuff that's not household hazardous waste that's really of concern to them. So if, he's saying, okay, I'm fine with DEQ doing this, but how can we do something concurrently? Yeah. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I've heard it now enough that I think that we all need to be putting on our thinking caps and reaching out to people who have knowledge in this area.
And we're gonna have the same, let's face it, we're gonna have the same issue with the Salmon River
Yes.
down 18. It's gonna be the same exact issue, not as big as what they have up the Santiam Canyon,
You're right.
but it's gonna be the same issue.
Yeah. Chair Jacobson has been putting out the
Yeah.
same call in their communities for sure.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Hopefully we can help or provide support to them. Okay, I think those are really the important things that I needed to communicate. Christian, you have anything?
No.
Okay,
nothing
Ken?
further, thank you.
All right, Carolina. All right, commissioners, then with that, I'll close this meeting of the Informal County Board of Commissioners.
Thanks, Casey.
Nope,
Thank you.
don't ask me again.
I heard no pretty clear.